Hi, everybody. Welcome inside to another edition of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast, episode 121, discussing splitting the plate today. So please subscribe, of course, Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts if you haven't done so already, or on YouTube to watch the show, the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast page. Thank you very much. Now we've got that out of the way. Let's do this. Splitting the plates. Let me bring in professional evaluator, successful business owner, former coach, friend, co-host, and mentor, Jake Epstein. Come on in. We got a show to do.
I'm here. I'm in. Even
Okay.
though I feel like you're in a new room.
Not in a new room. I just did some shifting. I'm in
Yeah.
my new studio.
It's going to be a great show because of it.
The corner of the master bedroom.
There you go.
Hey, next week we're discussing off-season hitting progression plans, episode 122. Let's crack that shell open a bit today, though. The off-season, it's here finally. Next week is Thanksgiving, or next weekend is the weekend before Thanksgiving. The World Series just ended. We were talking about this off air. It just ended last week. Rob Manfred has to do something about that, by the way. But anyway, won't get into that right now. How do hitters get into that off-season mindset preparation phase?
You have to, after some time off, you have to figure out what you need to do. It might be different than what other people need to do, whether it's maybe upper body, maybe it's a swing plane adjustment, maybe it's a rhythm adjustment. Your rhythm was off, your stride didn't feel good. Maybe it's lower body sequencing. Maybe our hips aren't. We just looked at a lot of KVS reports. We did some assessments down in Texas. And, those kind of tell you, wow, you're using your upper body way more than your lower body. Like, we need to even that out. So, you kind of figure out what is most important to you to get better. Sometimes it's weight room. Sometimes it's nutrition. Sometimes it's conditioning. I remember Pablo Sandoval, poor guy, had to run up the mountain every single day. He had to lose 30 pounds in the off season because he'd put on weight during the season. So, figure out what's most important for you. Create a timeline. Okay, I have 10 weeks to do this. What is my goal? Well, my goal is to fix this move within, whatever I just said, 8-10 weeks, and slowly start with non-stressful moves. And then by the end, you want to add in stressful environments to see if that muscle memory has set in.
Be careful, upcoming free agents across Major League Baseball, because I'll tell you what, you might end up like Pablo Sandoval, where you sign with the Red Sox, you have some miserable seasons in Boston or wherever you may go, and then you go back to your original team and you become, again, one of the most popular players. By the way, he's one of the most popular players in San Francisco Giants history.
So fun. That guy
Posey,
was so fun.
Bonds, Sandoval. I mean, fans love him.
I would say fans loved him more than any of the others.
Really?
Just for his personality and what he brought to the team, and he got some rings. But, Posey was more of a silent leader.
Yeah.
Wasn't very vocal. He just very businesslike. And Bonds was Bonds. He was just electric. Right. But he wasn't a big press guy. And Sandoval, I think, brought it all together when he was there. He only had, some couple really crazy years. He was a solid player, but he was electric.
Yeah, I like how you brought up that he used to run mountains. Jerry Rice used to run hills as well in the offseason. That's why he had such good conditioning. I don't know if you knew that, but Jerry Rice, that was when he was with the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
I made that correlation.
Same build. Those guys had the same build.
They did. It's the new studio. That's got my mind working. Speaking of the offseason, all right, this list I'm going to give you here. Aaron Judge, Trey Turner, Carlos Correa, Xander Bogaerts, Dansby Swanson. I love them all. I do put an order, though, my own order, who I'd rather have first. Who of those players, though, that group, would you want offensively that fits into your team's lineup identity?
Well, I think you got to throw Judge out of that equation because everybody else is a shortstop.
Okay.
Listen,
I would take went Judge. On MLB.com, the top 20 free agents.
I would say if I needed an outfielder, I'd take Judge. If I needed a shortstop, I would probably take Trey Turner. I really like Trey Turner. I think he brings similar pop to those other guys. Correa might have a little bit more pop. I think he steals more bags. I think he's more electric on the bases. They all are kind of 300 hitters. I don't think you could go wrong. I guess I don't know what Swanson is. I don't know what kind of – I didn't really look up his stats much, but he's a gamer for sure. I don't think you can go wrong with anyone, but I think if I was taking somebody, I think Trey Turner, I've always – something about him I've always really liked. I know his swing plane plays. It's always played. And I think he has pop to go with that. So if he can get you 15 to 20 home runs with making pretty consistent contact, and then being able to bunt if he goes into a slump or steal a base on a walk, I think he's going to score a few more runs than the other guys as well.
All right, Dansby Swanson, you mentioned him.
Yeah, what do you got?
I'm doing some math here. Okay, in the last 2 years, he's played in a combined 322 games out of 324 possible games. 2021 played in 160 games. Hit that big home run in Game 4 against the Astros in the World Series, which ultimately led to the Braves winning the World Series. And this year, first time in his career, 2022, perfect timing, he became an all-star, played in all 162 games, hit 25 home runs, drove in 96. That was a career high. Let's see here. Struck out on 182 times, also a career high. 4-4, so somewhat average to above average for him, but in regards to his career numbers, 277 batting average, 329 on base, 447 slugging, 776 OPS. I'm more of a Bogarts guy. I think he gives your lineup a lot of flexibility with what he can do. By the way, you mentioned Trey Turner. We did a mechanical breakdown series on him. I think it was last year, right? Maybe
last offseason, I think.
Right. We did a mechanical breakdown series on him. We did one also on Xander Bogaerts. We did one on Judge. Who was the other fucking guy? Let me see here. Correa. We did one on him as well. But I think that looking at with I like Swanson a lot, but I like Correa a lot. Always have loved his swing. I think it's one of the more perfect swings, for lack of a better term, that's out there. But looking at Bogaerts, Trey Turner, same thing. And the speed, his athleticism, you've got your leadoff hitter wherever he signs in Trey Turner. But Xander Bogaerts, I think, gives the best lineup identity to whomever he may sign with.
Can't go wrong. I mean, really, that class is as consistent and has been doing it for a while. Defensively, offensively, leadership. Correa has a little bit more outgoing personality, I guess, at least in the media, about what he thinks about himself. Other than that, I think those are all pretty good clubhouse guys from what I've heard. But Correa's, he's a postseason veteran, and so is Turner, right? Those guys have a lot of postseason games under their belts. And Swanson. I mean, it's a really great class of shortstops.
I agree. Yeah, it's hard to go wrong with any of those guys. And so I wonder what they're going to make. What the money that they're going to generate this offseason. I mean, they may just combined altogether generate $500 million themselves combined in total worth of contracts
for 1 year. 1 year's worth of work.
Can you imagine?
Yeah. No, they will. Absolutely.
In 1 year.
No, they will. I mean, there's going to be a ton of money thrown up, but I wonder if it's going to be less because there is competition. Yeah. Last year it was Correa and Seager.
Right.
Those were the two main shortstops that were out there, and they got huge numbers. Well, now you have four of these guys to choose from. Maybe those numbers are going to be diluted a little bit. I guess only time will tell.
So who sets the bar? Which one of those guys, in your opinion, if you're the general manager of whatever team, and
they're definitely going off of Seager, I would say. They're going off of Seager's last year.
What about out of those guys, who sets that bar, that market price? The guys who are free agents this year.
The shortstops?
Yes.
Judge is going to he's on his own island.
Right, because I'm talking about just shortstops, right?
Yeah, the shortstops. Probably Correa.
Right.
I think Correa might set it.
So he sets the market price.
He could sign first, unless the Dodgers or somebody tries to re-sign Turner.
Yeah.
Could happen.
If the Astros were to lose the World Series, I would have said he should probably re-sign back with the Astros and move Pena to like second base. But they don't need to now because Pena's just a stud.
I saw something the Phillies were going to look at.
Trey Turner.
Yeah.
Your favorite team.
No, but I feel bad for the kid.
I called him Sprout the other day.
Yeah, Stott? Is that
Stott. I called him Sprout because I saw the Sprouts food mart that I passed on my way home from the gym.
Yeah, I mean, geez. Sorry, I just took my team to the World Series as a rookie.
Yeah, but bump him over to second base. You got a little bump.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's our free agent breakdown. We might break. I don't know. We've broken down all those swings of those, except for Swanson. Maybe we'll break his swing
I
down
love
here.
Swanson's swing too. He's got really good hand pass. Really, they're all very consistent players. I bet if you compared most of their numbers the last 5 years, they're going to be somewhat similar.
Right. By the way, speaking of Pena, speaking of the Astros, we really won't touch much on this because we don't know the goings on. But you win the World Series if you're a general manager. You reach the pinnacle as a general manager or as a coach or whatever that position is, and you lose your job. Hey, kids, you want to work in professional sports? I mean, it's
That's
crazy.
mind blowing to me. I
I
don't know
couldn't
what his
believe it.
contract was, but
It was a 3-year deal. It was a 3-year contract. It expired, and apparently, according to reports from Jeff Passan, Bob Nightingale, they all said this was reports on Twitter, and they were verified. The new $8. By the way, you're gonna get the new $8 check mark on Twitter at Epstein hitting on
hey,
Twitter.
buddy, if I had a blue check mark, I'd pay for it.
Okay. At Jim Tara on Twitter, by the way, and on Instagram as well for both of those handles. But they said on Twitter that he was offered a new 1-year contract, no raise. And he said no. And Jim Crane said, okay, well, adios there, amigo. We'll talk down the road.
There must have been something there. How do you give a guy a 1-year deal?
Right.
A GM a GM a 1-year deal? They just won the World Series.
Yeah.
So there was some bad blood or something going on there. Especially, you probably signed Dusty to, and I don't know what he makes, that GM, but Dusty's probably going to get $5 or $6 million or more for his 1-year deal, and the GM is probably going to work even longer hours. And what's he going to make? What? I don't know what his old contract was. I thought I read something. It may have been the assistant GM was getting $1 million, but whatever that number was, pissed him off.
Yeah. Yeah. I wonder if it's Dusty Baker, the tug and the pull of the old school versus new school. You just had a 73-year-old manager win the World Series. He was in Jim Crane's office negotiating with Jim Crane. He got that contract done, signed it in front of the owner, and the old school won out in this case. And Jim Crane might be leaning that way because some of the players I read last night that were picked up at the trade deadline or in the last few years from an organization run, baseball operations department run by James. I almost call him Jim Click, by the way. James Click, run by James Click. They haven't really produced all that much. And he's more of an analytical type guy. His assistant general manager, who also just got fired, he was an analytical type guy. Research came from research and development, hired over from the Dodgers. So I wonder if Jim Crane wants to sort of skew and streamline towards more old school and baseball centric type general manager or a baseball operator, or the face of that baseball operations department.
I don't know. They just won the World Series. They've been the most consistent team the last 6 years. I don't think I would have done anything. I think I would keep a mix of analytical guys and traditional guys. I think it's a good combo. If you can find the right people that can work together, it's the perfect harmony.
Like this,
now,
like us.
Maybe they like us, right? I'm smart and so uncalled for right there.
Why? That's really
so mean.
Why were you so mean right there?
What were we talking about? No, but I think you have to have the perfect mix of old and new school technologies. You got to have experienced people that decipher the crazy analytical information. And if you can have that buffer, you can have those translators in there, then it works. But I guess if it's not broke, you fix it anyway. So that was what the Astros were going for.
It's like my lighting, the set, if it's broke, you just keep trying to fix it until you finally fix it. Right.
So good now.
By the way, I had this week, the University of Alabama head softball coach, a national champion in his own right on cross functionality, Pat Murphy. He joined me filling in for Cassie. So again, subscribe to cross functionality, functionality, please. Apple, Google, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. And I did bring this up to him about, Pat, what do you think of all this new technology that's come into baseball, that's come into softball? As a coach, you see college coaches, they have all this technology. Sometimes they don't know how to use all of this data. And how did you decipher through all of this? And he told me, Ep, that he told his director of player development, pick 5 elements that we can use, data points, technology, whatever that we can use and we can blend in with our program. That's, I think, it is the best way to go. I don't care if it's collegiate or if it's an academy or professional baseball.
And you got to figure out what your players are like and how they interpret information and the right information and if they want to change or not change. And you have to be careful with that. You can't force people to do certain things. So yeah, if you can have something that you can chart and be consistent with, that's probably the best way to go for sure.
Yeah. So again, subscribe to Cross Functionality, Apple, Google, Spotify. You can watch the show on the Softball Strength Academy YouTube page as well. You can watch us on the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast YouTube page and email us your questions, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. We will get to Doug's question finally 2 weeks late here towards the end of today's show. All right, today's topic, episode 121. Last week, by the way, check out the episode on YouTube. We broke down the swing of Mike Piazza, Mechanical Breakdown Series. I think it was volume 37. I'm losing track at this point, but it was a gold edition and it was a doozy. So please subscribe and watch that previous episode, Mechanical Breakdown Series. Okay, today's topic, Splitting the Plate, episode 121. It all starts with hitters knowing their strengths and weaknesses, correct?
Absolutely. Why would you look for a pitch with less than 2 strikes that you're not comfortable with? If you don't handle the pitch in as well, don't look in with less than 2 strikes. They may be trying to throw you in, but it doesn't mean they're going to get it there every time. Maybe they miss out over the plate. So know what you do best and then know how to make adjustments. So as the count changes, your anticipation or your plan has to change along with it. So you can cut the plate into however you want it. You can cut it into halves. You can cut it into quarters, thirds. We use balls. So, ball 1 through ball 6, essentially ball 1 would be your inside corner and ball 6 would be your outside corner. In all likelihood, it's more like ball 7. That low and away pitch is going to be called a strike at most levels besides professional baseball. In college, it's still a strike. So, ball 1 through 6.5, 7, and you say, okay, I want to cover these pitches early in the count. If I want to cover middle in, I'm going to cover balls 1 through 3. Okay, so 3 balls with, it's like whatever, 8. What is a ball? What's the diameter of a ball? 3 inches? 9, maybe 9 inches total. I'm going to cover 9 inches of the plate at a time. Or maybe the count goes 2-0. Now I'm just going to maybe a 2-ball plate. Ball 2 and 3 is what I'm looking for. Maybe the count goes 0-2. I got to cover the whole plate now. I got to cover ball 1 through 6.5, 1 through 7. So, and this is baseball. Softball is more like 1 through 6, 1 through 5.5.
Now, for the record, just so, because you mentioned it, I did look it up. A regulation baseball is 9 to 9.5 inches in circumference and 2.86 to 2.94 inches in diameter. A weight of 5 to 5 1/4 ounces.
Okay. Yeah. So, you're covering, if you cover 3 balls, it's roughly, 8 to 9 inches, somewhere in there. So figure out, and maybe this pitcher, maybe you're a right-handed hitter, you're facing a lefty. The only pitch he's throwing in is a slider or a curveball. But most of the time he's throwing fastballs away and then he's throwing changeups away. Okay, well, I'm going to just sit and I'm going to take away ball 4, 5, and 6 from this guy. I'm going to keep my front shoulder in. I'm going to cheat to right field. Maybe I stride in towards the plate a little bit to help cover that pitch. I have a plan early in the count based on what that pitcher has done to me previously or what he's done to other players that have hit in this game prior to my at-bat. So it all starts with having a plan. As you get older, if you get into college, you get into professional baseball, you're going to have a scouting report plan. You're going to have a hitters meeting that talks about, okay, these are the pitchers we're going to face today. This is this guy's best pitch. This is what this guy tries to do. You get somewhat of a synopsis of each pitcher, and then as that pitcher enters the game, then you have, you can look at that exact chart and see what that pitcher is trying to do. But again, that might not be exactly for you and your type, the type of hitter you are, maybe where you hit in the lineup. maybe you're a different team. Maybe you're on a team that's not very offensive. And that scouting report comes from the weekend before against a team that's really offensive. And so they saw a lot more breaking balls, but maybe against you guys, you're typically late on pitches. And the scouting report against your team is to throw more fastballs, especially late in the count. You have to be very, very careful with reports because every team is different. And you have a scouting report against that pitching staff, but they also have a scouting report against you as hitters. So they're not going to always do the same thing as pitchers. If you're a better breaking ball team or a better fastball team, they're going to counteract that. So we're always making adjustments. We're always learning on the fly. We're watching that pitcher warm up in the bullpen. We're watching him warm up between innings. You're watching him face other players on your team. Then you can adjust your plan accordingly. And that adjustment might be splitting the plate into different parts.
Sure. But how do you split the plate into different parts based off, you mentioned in there some scouting reports, but what you've done in previous games, what you're going through at that time? You might be going through a hot streak. You might be going through a tough stretch, one for your last 20. How do you decipher then at that point what your strengths are to then splitting the plate to work into your advantage?
Such a good question, Jim.
Thank you.
It really is. That's a really good question.
Because there's a lot of it, and I ask you that because there's a lot of information out there. You and I both have experienced this in professional clubhouses. There's the hitters meetings. There's the scouting reports of this guy. There's the heat maps. There's all of this stuff that's out there, and that's fine. That's great information, right? Information is king, but we have to look at what we're doing in that moment as well, and what kind of stretch we're going through. I think, in my opinion.
You're right. If I'm hot, I'm going to be more selective. It's that simple. If I'm seeing the ball good and I'm not fouling off or swinging and missing, meaning my timing is on, my rhythm is on, I feel good, I'm going to be more selective. I might look for a 2-ball zone, whether it's 2 balls on the inner half or 2 balls on the outer half. I'm going to sit on that pitch because maybe every time I take a swing, I'm putting the ball in play somewhere. I'm not swinging through stuff, and I feel good. Now, on the contrary, if I'm struggling, if you look at Altuve, he actually swung himself out of his slump that he had in the World Series. He was not hitting the ball great, but he also wasn't taking a lot of strikes. He was still up there trying to be aggressive because he didn't want to get behind in the count. And it goes back to my dad telling me this as a young kid when he used to say, when I faced Nolan Ryan, the reason I had some success against him, not a lot of success, but I had success compared to a lot of people, was because I didn't want to hit that breaking ball with 2 strikes. So I wasn't looking for the perfect pitch. I was looking for a fastball, and I wasn't going to be late. And I was looking at probably a 5-ball zone with less than 2 strikes. I was opening up my zone. I wasn't trying to be too picky on pitches because he had something that could put me away. And when you face pitchers that can do that, you want to be a little bit more aggressive early in the count, maybe before they get to that put away pitch. And obviously Nolan Ryan was an outlier back then. He threw a lot harder than everyone, and his breaking ball had more spin than everyone. But in today's game, you still have pitchers that can put you away. And sometimes if that's the case, maybe you split the plate up into halves instead of quarters.
It seemed like that's what Yordan Alvarez also did in the World Series. He was looking in. He was not going to swing at anything away from Jose Alvarado. And he got that pitch in right, pretty much, middle in, right down the heart of the plate, middle to the inside. And he ripped it 400 plus feet. We saw that a lot with Bryce Harper, who Doug has written in about today with his listener question. We saw that in the postseason, what made him really successful. It seemed like he split that plate in half, but at times it changed. It went from looking in to looking away, looking in, looking away. It didn't really seem like he looked much top to bottom.
Yes.
Didn't seem like he looked much vertically, but he was looking in, looking away. But that again goes back to my previous question in that it changed because of how things were going, how he was pitched in previous plate appearances. That's why it's so important to learn, right? Am I right? To learn from previous at-bats.
You have to. It really is a thinking man's game or a thinking woman's game if you're playing softball. You can't just roll up there. The really great players are smart. Ted Williams was brilliant. Barry Bonds, we talked about this probably years ago now, when he had a conversation with Yorvit Torrealba before he went up and said, this is what the pitcher's going to do. He's going to throw me this pitch on the first pitch, this pitch on the second pitch, and I'm going to hit the third pitch. Boom. That's exactly what happened. And they wrote a huge article in the Denver Post about it. But that's what he was. He was smarter. Yes, he had a great swing. Yes, he was strong. Yes, he was talented and had great vision, but he was really, really smart. And you have to be a successful hitter. You have players that have greats. Why are there players with really good mechanics that, I mean, we draft every year? You know, our organization, other organizations draft these really great players with good mechanics. Why don't they ever pan out? Maybe their mindset isn't right. That's a hard thing to draft. How sharp is this player on the field? Wow, he moves good. He gets good reads. He seems to have a head for the game, they'll say. He has good instincts. But does he have that mental acuity to really lock in at the right times and to make those adjustments? Why are there so many first-round quarterbacks in the NFL that never pan out to being a first-round quarterback? It's the same reason. So it's hard. I mean, there's companies, cognitive companies that do testing and whatnot, and that shows a lot of information, but it just doesn't show the game. Like, how do they deal with the game and the pressure, and with all the information, how do they filter it out and then create a plan and then put a swing on? And that's what makes great players. And scouting will find players with talent, with ability, with strength and speed. But it's really hard to get that last piece in there. And sometimes you don't know until they've been in your organization for 4 or 5 years.
Toronto Blue Jays manager John Schneider once told me this years ago about Vladimir Guerrero Jr. He said he thinks so well along with the pitcher that he has a major league type approach. And he could take a fastball right down the heart of the plate, the best pitch he may get all night at 95, but he will take it for a strike because he wasn't looking for that pitch. And the pitch that he was looking for or could be looking for is coming next, and he's going to smash that either over the wall or to one of the gaps. And that's really what you're talking about there in the difference with players and their approaches and that cognitive ability to think along with the pitcher and in turn split the play.
It's creating a plan, and I stress this so much with players, and some players can do it and some people can't, but you stick to your plan.
Yeah.
You have a plan. You know what they're going to do to you. You can't deviate from that plan. Players that deviate are not mentally strong. So what you're saying, Manny Ramirez was the same way as Vlad Guerrero. Like, he would take pitches. You'd be like, how do you take that pitch? Because he was sitting on something else. And think about it. If a guy's throwing 95 and you're looking for 95, it's not going to seem that fast. If a guy's throwing 95 and you're looking for a fastball and a curveball at 80, 95 is going to jump on you. Right? If you take that out of the equation and say, I'm not going to be late, I'm looking for heat, I'm looking for something up in the zone, I'm going to swing 2 inches over this ball because the spin rate is so high. He's a 4-seam thrower. I'm going to swing over this ball. I'm going to aim. This is what you should do. Or if it's a sinker, I'm going to try to get underneath that sinker, right? I'm not going to see it the last couple inches when it's going to break. I got to swing underneath that. So if you're sitting on it and you're looking for it, you can have success. But think about it. If you're looking for a 4-seamer and a 2-seamer and a cutter and a changeup, everything is going to be more difficult. You can't really go up there looking for everything. You can't put yourself in that 2-strike scenario when you have less than 2 strikes. That's why we don't hit very good with 2 strikes. Go up there with a plan on what you want to do. It's not guessing if you're sitting on a fastball. Okay? Now, if you're sitting on a fastball with 2 strikes, that could be more guessing. But when you're ahead in the count, sit on a location or sit on a pitch or a speed that you're looking for, and you'll have. Now, if you're playing 12U Little League or 12U Travel Ball, just look for a strike. Like, let's not get crazy with it. Look fast or slow. Is it a fastball? I'm going to unload on it. I'm not looking if it's inside or outside per se, because pitchers are, they're just trying to throw strikes, unless they're really elite pitchers at that time. But don't get too crazy at the younger ages. Look fast or slow. A curveball at 12U is going to look way different than a fastball. It's not going to come out of the same slot. I don't care what anybody says. Okay, they don't have the strength to do that yet. So if you see a breaking ball pop, you have to know how to adjust this. I do it with my kid all the time. Every softball is big on the changeup at this age, which is great. Take the changeup. The girl throws 1 changeup per at bat or per every other at bat. why would we swing at that pitch with less than 2 strikes? It's like 20 miles an hour slower. Just take it. Like, why can't we do that? Well, it's because they haven't seen it yet, and they're just like squirrel, and they'll swing at it. So the key is look for what you're looking for and abort the swing on anything else that doesn't fit that mold. If I'm looking for a rhinoceros and an elephant walks up, I'm not gonna swing at the elephant.
I hope you wouldn't.
Yeah.
That might have been. I love you. I do. I want to preface.
I notice how I said swing.
I want to preface by saying I love you, and you're a genius. But out of 120 and a half episodes, that may have been the worst analogy in the 2 years we've done this show. And I was laughing during that. I was laughing during that because there was a guy whose son I played with when I was a kid. And he once told my dad when we were playing fall ball, he said, yeah, my son, I won't name the kid, but my son, he's hitting 1,050. And my dad looks at him and he goes, the guy's name was Steve. He goes, Steve, you can't hit that. It's an impossible batting average. Mathematically, it's impossible. Now, this was the same father who used to tell everybody else that his kid throws a knuckle curveball, right? Well, that kid, when he tried to throw that knuckle curveball, he'd walk people or he'd get shelled. So my point is, just to circle back to what you were saying, when you're younger, looking fast or slow, you don't have to worry about looking for certain specific fast or slow pitches. You can just look fast or slow. And if it's a strike, let it loose and swing at that elephant.
No, don't swing at the elephant, the rhino.
The rhino, whatever. Swing at the rhino. Right?
We can edit that, right? We'll just pull that edit.
I'm not editing that. That's staying in there. That's
I bet it is forever. That'll be the soundbite for this.
That is the worst and best analogy that we'll ever have in the lab history of the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast.
You've heard it here.
You heard it here first. Pete Alonso said something interesting I found this morning. He said in this article written by Alex Butler in 2019 EP for the publication UPI, he said in regards to his approach, quote, I know if they're throwing their best stuff and I'm not going to hit it if it's well located, but if it's over the heart of the plate, then I'll have a much better chance. So to me, I just want to stay the same and be able to capitalize on pitches that are in the zone. Now, I've always said my theory is that major league hitters, professional hitters, major league hitters, though, get 2 pitches per game that are cookies that they can hit out of the ballpark because any major leaguer can hit a home run anytime. That's the truth. Now, of course, there's ceilings, etc. But if you get that right pitch, you can hit a home run. Minor leaguers, player development, you'll get 2.5 on average, maybe 2.5 to 3 pitches. But that's to the quote Alonso with that quote there from Pete. I forgot to say unquote, whatever. But with that quote right there, you get about 2 pitches per game to hit. That's why it's kind of more imperative to split the plate so you can get better your chances and up the percentage of maybe you getting that pitch. And some nights you won't get 2 pitches. Sometimes you only get 1 pitch to hit.
Yeah, and sometimes you foul it off.
Right.
And that's the irony is guys get a lot of good pitches to hit. Mm-hmm. Hitting's hard. But if you can have a swing that at least barrels those up, that goes back to our Paul Molitor story we've told multiple times. Like, how'd you have 3,000 hits? I didn't miss mistakes.
Right.
Sometimes those mistakes come with 2 strikes and you're protecting and you foul it off. But he's exactly right, Alonso. If a pitcher makes the pitch that he or she wants to make, you're going to lose. They're not trying to... Yeah, they're trying to split a... That's what they're trying to do. They're trying to create a lot of movement, a lot of spin, and they're trying to hit a spot. Well, if they hit those spots, you are not going to hit. You're going to hit under 100. The problem for pitchers is, pitching's hard too, and they don't always hit their spots, and maybe they fall behind in the count, and now they have to miss their spot towards the plate instead of off the plate. So you have to take advantage of the... And Alonso's exactly right. You can't miss that mistake. If it's the first pitch, it's the 4th pitch. Maybe if you swing at the first pitch and ground out, you never get that cookie that may have happened on the 3rd or 4th pitch, right? Mm-hmm. So it's just a fun game. Thinking through it and the scenarios and guys that are good and have good plans and other people that are learning. It's fun to watch guys that have been in the league for 6 months. Philly's had a lot of those guys. Geez, they don't have perfect plans yet, but the more they're going to be around guys like Harper or Castellanos or Segura all those guys have such great experiences. Schwarber, you lean on those, you have those conversations, and hopefully they are still having those conversations, and we're not just looking at iPads about, how did I look on that swing, or where did they get it? It's like, have a conversation about what were you looking for there? What was your process with that? Well, in my experience, it would be this, and that's where good hitting coaches become great hitting coaches, is that they have the ability to communicate with the player about what is going on to that player that night, not what's going on to somebody else. How can I help this player right now? Because as a hitting coach, you put yourself in their shoes, in the box during each at bat. One player only has to do that for themselves. But a hitting coach, you're trying to figure out. I mean, that's what I did. And I'd have notes on every single pitch of every at bat for players. I would just write them down. He started off here. The hitter looked bad on this pitch. They're going to continue to go back to that. And then I would share that information with the player between at bats in hopes that they would make an adjustment.
Perfect segue, by the way. So you make up for your awful analogy from earlier with a perfect segue talking about the Phillies and Bryce Harper. That brings us to today's listener question. I think we covered everything with splitting the plate. Again, if you have any questions, please email us, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. Reach out to us on Twitter and Instagram @JimTara and @Epstein Hitting as well. This question comes to us from Doug, sent to us via jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. And Doug writes, "Hi guys, I was wondering your thoughts on the performance of Bryce Harper. It seems like his swing has really changed from when he first came into the league. He had a massive weight shift, and it appeared that he was more of a linear hitter rather than now using his lower half a lot more. Jake, thoughts? ? Thanks! !
Where's Doug from? Doug. Do I know Doug?
He did not say. It does not say. Sorry. Doug, where are you from?
Write us. We'll get to it in 3 weeks.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So
after the Thanksgiving break.
I don't know if it's changed all that much. You go back to Bryce Harper. I just saw it show up on my feed when he's swinging a 36-ounce bat in Vegas or something, and he's going, and he looks great. Like, he's swinging the heck out of that stuff. So I would say Bryce Harper, maybe he did have a bigger leg kick and a weight shift. I do remember when he was younger, he had a big leg kick, he had a big weight shift, and then when he first came up in the major leagues, they took it away from him, and he just did the no stride, and he struggled miserably. Then he went back down to the minor leagues, got his rhythm and stride back, and then came back up. The reason I bring that up is he still does the no stride, I think, once in a while, right? Like, sometimes with 2 strikes, I think that's great. I think it's cool. Maybe he wasted 6 months of his life back then when he was first coming up and struggled with the no stride because he had never done it. But now he can do both. I always tell my students, hey, let's try this. You should be able to just, if you're facing a machine that, doesn't have any kind of timing mechanism, just do a no stride, drop your heel, swing. So I don't know if I would agree that his swing has changed that much. I will say he's shortened up a lot. He's not nearly as aggressive with 2 strikes. He lets it go early in the count. Like, I would say he's vicious on strike 1. His first swing of the at bat, he is not taking it. He sees a strike, even if it's a breaking ball, if it's hittable, he's taking a lash at it. I will also say that I don't know how many balls he put in play on the first pitch during the playoffs and World Series when I watched him. Hardly at all. Like, he swung at almost every first pitch, and he looked great and didn't really put any of them in play, at least hard. So late in the count, he found a lot more barrels, but you could see his approach shifted. All of a sudden, his leg kick got not as high, still as far. He still gets very wide with his stride, but maybe not as high. He still loads into his back hip really well. But for me, he was trying to let stuff get deep, and he was trying to use the opposite field. So I don't know if I've seen a huge drastic shift in his swing. I guess I could go back. I haven't go back to maybe his rookie year and compared it to what we're doing. But to me, it seems when I see old highlights of him, and now he still has a pretty darn good weight shift, and his swing plane seems pretty similar, maybe a little bit flatter now because he's been forced probably the last 5 years to catch up to high fastballs and to stay on top of high fastballs. So in order to do that, maybe he's got to stay a little bit more upright. Maybe he can't get as wide with his legs because that gets you lower to the ground. So I could definitely see that transformation happening as pitching has changed from when he came up to where he is now with more high fastballs, top of the zone. That's where they try to get him with higher spin rates.
Do you think he gets into his back leg better, more?
He might. I don't know if
Yeah.
I remember him not doing that though.
Well,
That's the thing.
he used to get into his back leg, and his weight would really shift onto his front
Yeah.
leg. I mean, a lot. I mean, he had a huge weight shift when he first came up, and it seems like
Yeah.
as he's gotten bigger, as he's gotten stronger, he's matured both physically and mentally, that he's more into his legs. He's using ground force a lot more. That's what it seems like to me, just watching him from the open side.
Yeah, maybe. I don't think I have enough information on his old. I guess his back foot. I mean, his back foot still moves quite a bit.
You're right.
Typically, if your back foot moves a lot, then you have a big weight shift. And his back foot used to move a lot. I just think his head probably drifted forward a little bit more. And when his head drifted forward, he kind of leaned forward with his upper body, but his front leg always got straight. He rotated after heel plant. It's just maybe he had more weight going forward. I
Sure.
could see that, especially if his head went forward with it. That'll bring more weight. If he's keeping his head back over his back hip more now, when he rotates, his back foot will still move, but it won't maybe move as much as it did before.
Right. Right. Well, great question, Doug. Thank you
Mhm.
very much. And if anybody has any other questions, please email us, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. Again, jimbopodcast21@gmail.com. Next week, off-season progression plans. Off-season is here. Finally. We talked about it last week. The World Series and the Major League season lasted like 18 years. Finally, the offseason is here, and we'll talk about offseason regression plans going through it, through the holidays into January, what you need to do to get yourself prepared for what is and will be the 2023 season, if we are all still here and some asteroid doesn't hit Earth.
We got that taken care of now.
Oh, we do?
Yeah. Yeah, NASA shot the thing and blew up hit the asteroid, knocked it off course.
What's it going to be like that movie, the Armageddon, where we got to send people up to try to blow it up?
No, I need to watch that movie again. That's a good one.
Yeah, who was it? Roger Ebert, the movie critic,
Yeah.
he hated it. He thought it was like the worst movie of whatever year it came out, 1999.
Such a feel-good movie.
I know,
Scary.
but it does get a little corny towards the end.
Of course it does. It's a movie.
I know, but there's got to be some realism. I don't want to keep having to suspend my disbelief. I hate doing that in movies and TV. Like, I don't want to suspend my disbelief.
Great story, though.
It was a great story, but again,
it could happen.
What?
I mean, it could happen. An asteroid knocking out the planet.
Yeah. I mean, all right, maybe.
They were ahead of their time. Oil drillers. Isn't that what it was? They had to drill down into the meteor.
They used Jim's oil drilling.
Yeah, right. That's right.
Yeah.
They had the roughnecks out there.
That's next week. Off-season progression. Now imagine being though in that movie. Now you want me to really make it believable. Imagine you blow up an asteroid, you come back, you're alive. You should never have to pay for anything ever again. No. Or in other words, you should get like $20 million each from the government. And say, just okay,
free booze, free beers, free food, free cars.
Right.
You could just roll in, hey, I just saved your car dealership.
Right.
In your life. What do you think?
That's pretty much right. I mean, you can roll into, like, say I want to go, like, say I didn't have tickets to the Lightning, right? And I wanted to go to watch the Lightning play the Caps tomorrow night.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Which is a Sunday.
You think anyone's still tuned in? Just curious.
To what? Tuned into what?
To our.
Let me just finish. So let's say I wanted to go to that game tomorrow night. I could just walk in and say, "Hey, you guys wouldn't be playing right now if it wasn't for me. I saved the planet, baby." What do you got coming up at the lab, BCS?
We have our college prep stuff coming up. So both in Denver and down there, we're creating off-season plans. So kind of exactly what you're talking about.
Oh, man. Perfect segue.
Look at you, man. Yeah. So I have a lot of training here in Denver the next month or so of players that'll come in from out of state and train. And then we do the same thing down in Texas. So we're using this time. I'll have everyone send me video. Hey, what do you need help with? How was our fall? Fall ball ended 1 or 2 weeks ago. What was our biggest issue? Boom, let's attack that issue. So just what we talked about at the very beginning of this. What is the main thing we can get better at? Let's put in the time to do it. Let's create the right way to do it. You can't do it by facing 95-mile-an-hour balls coming out of a machine, right? Let's have a process each and every day to build that muscle memory. If we have to make a change, you have to take, a couple thousand proper moves and 0 bad moves. If you take a couple thousand good moves and then you take 500 bad moves, you still know both. So we have to find the process. Now's the time, if we're not facing live pitching, to put in that work. And then come January, we start to dial it up with more stress. And then hopefully that sets in. So that's the process. That's what we're doing in both Denver and the lab.
BCS.
BCS.
And the Lab Epstein Hitting Podcast. They don't call me the best oil driller in the world for nothing.
Jim's oil drilling.
We'll talk to you next week, everybody. Thank you for listening. Subscribe. Do what you got to do. Talk to you next Monday.